idea for Kissing the Witch come from? Was it something that you had in your head for a long time?
No, this one was actually, you know the way taxi drivers and so on say, oh, I've got an idea for you, and it's usually no good to you. But a publisher, the late Roisin Conroy of Attic Press, so, you know, founding feminism in Ireland, really, Attic Press books, where she said to me, would you ever do us a book of sort of rewritten fairy tales? This was very much part of the 1980s to 90s movement of feminist revisionism, you know, following in the wake of people like Angela Carter. So Roisin said, do us a book of fairy tales. I didn't end up publishing it with her, but I have to credit her with the idea. And so I published it with Virago as a book of stories, 13 stories, but then the material is so theatrical. It's the easiest book I've ever written, because those founding oral narratives of the European tradition, they've been honed by time. If they weren't great, they wouldn't have been remembered and passed on, you know. So they passed that fireside test over the years. They're just fantastically meaty stories. So it seemed the natural next step to take it to theatre.
So what's your take then on like contemporary sort of Disney sanitized fairy tales like Frozen and Moana? Do you think that they're as accessible or as timeless as the classic fairy tales?
I'm not sure they'll last in quite the same way. I mean, there's things I like about both of those. Interestingly, Frozen isn't from a fairy tale source. They deliberately made up their own story, so it's actually all about friendship between sisters in a way you probably wouldn't get in a classic fairy tale. Moana manages to be, you know, politically a refreshing change in that you have a really non-white, really sturdy-legged heroine. So there's things I like about both of them as contemporary films. But there is something about the really ancient plots that gives you the shivers.
Obviously you broke the rules with Kissing the Witch by kind of retelling and reframing the fairy tales. Like, how do you think that the perception of that piece has changed since it was written? Because it was written in 1997, the book was?
The book is 97, yeah, the play was 2001. And what's fascinating now is I think a lot of ideas which would have been seen at that particular cultural moment as in their own little box of feminism, you know, they're the stuff of mainstream debate nowadays. You know, with the Me Too movement, we're seeing an extraordinary new attention paid to those moments of saying no, you know, of finding the ability to say no, get your hands off me, for instance. So I think we're seeing a whole new resonance around these classic storylines about you know, power struggles between the sexes, for instance. So it's funny to see an old work of mine suddenly get all the more resonant and to see a new generation take it up.